right. Hopefully this is going for us right now. Welcome in everybody. And Scott and I just had a nice long computer talk. So if you think a solution is going to be imminent here, but the extenders here and the internet still might be, not the internet, the computer, the machine still might be a little bit up and down, but we're working towards a solution. So welcome in everybody. Happy Thursday. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing well. I was looking for a string guy this morning, been thinking about the conversation we had last night, and I see he's already back today. So we'll talk non-exclusive and why that did not and would not make sense for and Ethan's kind of explaining it too right now. We'll talk about the non-exclusive tag and why that would have been a non-starter for Draymond Jones. If you wanted to tag him, you use the regular tag. And do a tag and trade, but which they declined to do. So lots of stuff going on. We'll have another good conversation, go about 45 minutes today. And then we're going to get Nick a new computer. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's got to happen. Got the credit card out and Chad's money right now. Exactly. We got Jeremy Sean coming in saying, morning, boys. I personally expect Alex Singleton back, Dalton Reisner and Draymond gone, maybe redo Chase Edmonds, Jake Martin, and Ronald Darby. Yeah, we'll get into that conversation, but certainly all possible. And you didn't list one of the players that has been listed and being talked about in Mike Purcell, and a guy I think the Broncos can save about $3.5 million off the top of my head from moving on from him. And he was solid last year, but in this defense, are you going to be more okay with DJ Jones there and kind of looking for spreading money elsewhere? Can you find that plugging 20% of snaps nose tackle for $1 million?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a $1 million, so you save 2.5, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'll bring up the numbers, but again, 3 is pretty cheap. I don't know, what are you gonna get that's so much better than Mike Purcell for an extra $2.5 million? Maybe you can. We've talked about, I've said a bunch of times, guards, centers, they're pretty cheap. I could go get a pretty decent offensive lineman for $2.5 million. We've seen it done, Nick, as we're doing this. So there will be several cap casualties. How many of them will come back? That's what becomes interesting. Like, I'll look at that list and say there's no way Graham Glasgow plays on this contract. I'm not saying no way he's going to be back. There's no way he plays on this contract. There's no way Ronald Darby plays on this contract. There's no way Chase Edmonds plays on this contract.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they won't be back.
Yeah. Absolutely. We got Kevin Gray coming in. Morning, Broncos country. Nick, Scott, and Dylan. Rob Bucksbaum. Good morning, gentlemen, from Nashville. Best MHH team. I know that we would have saved some money, but thoughts on releasing Jewel? Too valuable, methinks. Yeah, Jewel. I think Jewel is, you can save, I believe, $5 million moving on from Jewel.
It's a decent chunk of change, but this was one of your better players, leader. I think Jewel is somebody that you're willing to put $5 million into. Because if you didn't and you said, hey, let's talk about a restructure, you're due $3 million guaranteed, we're going to pay you $3 million signing bonus and extend your contract and lower your cap hit. He's got enough capital, I would say. We talk about your stock. I guess that's what I'm looking for, is stock. He's got enough stock around the league right now that I think he could get a similar contract pretty easily somewhere else. If he said, no, I don't want to redo my contract, go ahead and release me. I think he'd be okay. You need to have that kind of leverage over the player one way or another, financial or playing ability.
Yeah, and just with 1 year on his contract, I don't see the ability to approach him with a restructure. And also, I'm a big Iowa Jewel guy. I'm a big fan, obviously, but he's missed a lot of games due to injury. So I don't know if I'd want to approach him and give him another year. I liked that they signed him to a 2-year deal at the time because linebacker is a pretty easily replaceable position relatively to some other spots. And with his durability history, the more guarantees and years you add on, the more you're playing with fire. So I would wait for, I'd run Jewel this year on his contract. Sting guy, good morning. Good to see you. DWI guys, Ethan. I feel like we haven't seen Ethan in a couple days this week. So
Ethan's been busy. He's got work to do. So, but let's hit, I want to hit String Guy real quick and hit this question. He says,
good to see you, Ethan.
Yeah, where he comes up, he says, I think I'm not understanding the rules for the non-exclusive tag. If another team takes a player with that tag designation, they must give the other team 2 first-round picks. Is that correct? Correct. So it's basically, you would have to trade. It'd be the equivalent of, I want him, and I'm going to trade 2 first-round picks for you, and I'm going to sign him to his accelerated contract that you weren't willing to give him. Mm-hmm. So you're paying a lot of money, and you're giving up 2 first-round picks. Why can you do that with Lamar Jackson? Because 2 first-round picks for a 26-year-old MVP quarterback is chump change. teams would absolutely be willing to do that. That said, in the history of this game, only one player has ever changed teams that has been hit with the non-exclusive tag. It was Sean Gilbert several years back, another defensive lineman. Why you would not put a non-exclusive tag on Draymond Jones is because no one is giving you 2 first-round picks plus the contract for Draymond Jones. No one. They're not going to do that. So you basically just franchised him to that contract, which he might not want to play on. If you wanted to trade him and try and get something, a tag and trade, you use just the regular tag. That just extends how long you've got him under control with your rights. You've got him for another year. And then you can negotiate a new contract with him. You can negotiate, I'll trade him for a 7th round pick and you take his contract. It makes it more flexible. That non-exclusive tag means 2 first-round picks. And Draymond Jones isn't going to fetch 2 first-round picks on the open market. So that's why you would not use a non-exclusive tag. And Nick, frankly, the non-exclusive tag to me is a little dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of I don't know if poison pill's the right word, but it's like I said, oh, you've got a chance to go negotiate with other teams. Well, only one player has ever switched. So it's kind of, I'm going to show you the door. Here's the light. You have a chance. No, you don't. Not really. Because if they sign you to a contract, I then have the rights to match it. So Draymond goes and signs a 4-year, $60 million deal with the Bears. If he's got a non-exclusive tag on him, they've agreed, yeah, we're going to send you first-round picks. No, that's okay. We're going to go ahead and sign him back anyway. Now, the Broncos would not do that. They'd take the picks.
Yeah.
But Lamar Jackson, he would be worth 2 first-round picks. Teams would be willing to do that, but the Ravens are going to match that contract. They're making the market do the negotiating with Lamar Jackson for him, it's dishonest.
Smart with Lamar, though, in my opinion, from the Ravens. He's his own agent, right? Making him go out there and deal with multiple teams. So that way there's not any of the hurt feelings about dealing directly with him from the Ravens. Like, this is what the market said you're worth. So we're just matching that.
You see where the hurt feelings are now, though, Nick. Yeah. Everybody's saying there's collusion against some teams. If I'm the Atlanta Falcons, I don't want to go through the song and dance and hoops and jump through all these hoops to try and sign Lamar Jackson just to have the Ravens turn around and sign him and go through that. Oh, the Falcons have come to agreement with Lamar Jackson, only to be spurned and left at the altar. Spend a week whining and dining and convince him to come. Oh, no, that's okay. We'll sign it. It's BS, man. So that's why you're hearing so much of these teams aren't interested in Lamar Jackson. No. These teams aren't interested in doing the negotiating for the Baltimore Ravens. That's what they're not interested in doing.
Not to get too far in this conversation because this is a Broncos podcast, but given the cap space that the Falcons possess, they could probably make the deal in a way that it would be pretty damn hard for the Ravens to match.
Thought about that too. You make them an offer that the Ravens really couldn't match. But again, there's so much that can be done with the cap and with the contract and everything. I mean, the Saints were $30 million over the cap. Yet they signed Derek Carr, who have a huge contract. So, again, I wouldn't necessarily be all that interested in doing the negotiating doing all the hard work for the Baltimore Ravens. And I think that's the problem with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear my fans kick on my computer, so hopefully I'm okay with my CPU going on here. But morning, guys, from Ryan. Scott, still can't believe we traded those picks for Sean Payton. Just messing. Jesse in here. Morning, guys. Michaela Israel. Good to see you. Michaela.
It is 4:30 a.m. in Hawaii. Good morning, Broncos. Ohana, good morning. Good morning, Michael Davis. Appreciate you being here. And yes, Keith Brugman comes in. He says Matt Castle got tagged, but then he got the non-exclusive tag, and then he was traded to the Chiefs. I'm not positive. If I put a non-exclusive tag on you, can I still then make a negotiation where I can trade for what I want and basically remove that tag? I would think so, because I can sign somebody to a contract and remove the tag at any given time.
I think the tag in that case was just a mechanism that then they trade the rights to the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs put a new deal on him. It wasn't actually the trade preceded the contract versus the signing the contract and the offer sheet. So there's also like a transitional tag.
They should have tagged him unless they plan on tagging to tag JJ. Who's JJ?
Jerry Jeudy?
Who? Jerry Jeudy. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, but you can only use one tag a year. Yeah, Jerry Jeudy. Absolutely, that's who that was. All I could think of was Javonte. I'm like, you're not tagging Javonte Williams. Jerry Jeudy. They could possibly use a tag on Jerry Jeudy. They've got the 5th-year option available, but you can only use one tag. So, and the deadline is passed. So the Broncos did not use their franchise tag this year. That's done and gone.
Yep. Montana altitude. Morning, Nick and Scott. I'll say it again. I hope Sutton stays. Taylor Heineke for backup quarterback. Broncos will bring in somebody at backup. It'll be a Sean Payton pick, which will probably create a pretty interesting dynamic in that quarterback room, but we'll see how it all plays out. Our guy Patrick saying, aloha, gents. I just hope to put the cap savings to good use. Yeah, that's assuming that we're putting you're talking about the release. Yeah, something that's not going to be very popular in the short term, and I see a lot of Broncos fans had a Twitter thread about it, and a bunch fought back, but this could be an offseason where the Broncos are sitting there and playing the frugality game. Second-tier free agents, third-tier free agents, street free agents, and best protecting themselves to get comp picks and cap flexibility for 2024. I talked with Nick Corti, who does a lot of work for Spot Rack, and he's like one of the people who like broke the comp pick formula that the NFL had secret for a while, and then he's had it multiple years in a row where he's predicted it correctly. So he's kind of got it down, and he said that if the Broncos are playing the comp pick game with Draymond Jones, who's probably going to get a 3rd-round comp pick, you probably cannot sign any single free agents this cycle, non-street free agents, to a contract that exceeds $15 million plus average per year. Now, if you sign somebody in that 15 to 12 range, you're probably going to cancel out your Dalton Reisner contract, which will probably get about $8 million, in my opinion. It seems what the market is going to be about for him. That'll cancel that out, but it would protect your Draymond Jones one. So that means the Broncos are going to be a little bit limited in how they can spend if they want to play that game.
Unless you're going after a right tackle, which is something we discussed yesterday. Who would you rather have? And it's actually on this channel on Mile High Huddle. I cut up that discussion. Which player would be better for the Broncos? Which one makes this team better? Draymond Jones or a really good right tackle? $15 million. I mean, do you think the Broncos are going to come out and spend that kind of money on an external free agent on one? I can see a bunch of 5. So in that case, string guy, you do get a comp pick back. You'd get a 3rd-round pick back for Draymond Jones if you lose him as free agency, as long as you don't go out and get an equivalent free agent, because then you're basically giving up your comp pick, which shouldn't be comp picks and all that stuff anyway. But again, I digress. Maybe you go out and sign an offensive tackle. Maybe you go, but who else is out there that you would be dropping $15 million on, Nick, that could cancel out, that would possibly cancel out Draymond Jones?
Juwan Taylor, any of those tackles?
Besides the right tackle.
I guess if the Broncos move on from, this is just cheating, but if they move on from Garrett Bowles and then you sign Orlando Brown, right? Like that's a left tackle in that situation. I can't think of any defensive players that make sense for the Broncos that would be paid that much. Javon Hargrave is older, so I don't know if he's going to get as much APY as a Draymond Jones. Zach Allen's probably going to get a tier below. But again, just talking about how that cap situation plays out for the Broncos, they might have to hardline on a bunch of these deals, put a topper on it, saying we can't go above this because we're trying to protect that Draymond Jones piece. Why would you do that? Because cost-controlled players are going to be the only way out of a potential dead cap hit over 2024 and 2025 of Russell Wilson. So nobody wants to hear that. Oh, what does that mean for George Paton? It means that George Paton's not calling the shots, and he's going to have to make do with what he has this year. And he won't want to do that. He has to save his job. It's not his team. These are the parameters. You better hit on your damn draft picks. Your draft picks that you took last year better start to come together. Otherwise, you might be out of a job in a year. I know it's all sunshine and rainbows right now, but I believe that as much as Russell Wilson's on a 1-year audition, same goes for George Paton right now.
I agree with you. In fact, if we rolled it back far enough, we asked, do you think if Sean Payton is hired, is George Paton here on August 1st? I said no. I said I don't think so. Now, obviously, that still is possible. You can still get through the draft, you can still get through free agency and make a change. But right now, it seems like he will be here. Everybody's talking positively. The body language is all good. I'm not picking up any strange vibes from the from the press conferences that you can sometimes glean. So yeah, I would say that he is here for this year, but then it's going to results this year are going to determine a lot of jobs for 2024. This is a 1 year. Show me what you can do. Otherwise, we're going to hit the nuke button.
Yep, KB82. Good morning, fellas. What would cost to sign Taylor Lewan? What would you think of the move? He's never played right tackle in his career, to my knowledge, and also he's been exceedingly unavailable the last few years. His body has kind of deteriorated on him. If the Broncos had a need at left tackle rather than somebody already here, sure, toss him 1.5 million over 1 year and then draft somebody or sign it. Like cheap. I mean, that's what he's been. He's been crap the last 2 years. When he's been on the field, and he hasn't been on the field really. So
yeah, that's we've seen that a lot talking about Taylor Lewan. You need an offensive tackle, but you need a right tackle. And I've always said that if you can play left, you can play right, but not for the kind of money that it's going to cost to bring in Taylor Lewan. If he decides to play, he would say, you offer him $1 million, be like, that's okay, I'll just
retire.
won't play anymore. I can make more money out of football than I could in football if that's the case, and good for him. To build up his personal brand to the point where he could work in media or investments or whatever he wanted to do. But I don't think Taylor Lewan, especially with the injury history that you've been dealing with, I don't want to bring in a guy that's got injury history. Do you? I think I know the answer to that, Broncos country.
Yeah, and you mentioned Taylor Lewan maybe being able to make more money outside of playing the game versus playing the game. Same. Taylor Lewan and I, the same guy. No doubt about that. Same type of body, just exactly. Big Ten guys. Michael Ronquillo, good morning, Nick and Scott and Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em. David coming in here saying, morning, Broncos family. Our guy Dom in the house, good morning. And we got a $10 super coming in from Montana Altitude saying, is there a Tim Patrick update available? Looking forward to the new offensive line. Appreciate all you guys do. Last update we had was from the press conference, pre-combine press conference from George Paton saying that seems to be on track and things are okay there. There had been no contradictory reports coming out almost immediately after that, like we had with Javonte Williams. So I'm going to take that a little bit more at its word, especially considering that injury happened in July compared to October. And also, I don't think it was multiple ligaments in the knee for Tim Patrick like it was for Javonte Williams. So I'm thinking he's going to be available, but still might be a slow on-ramp for him to start the year somewhat, but I think he'll be back.
And a power receiver, it wouldn't affect him as much as it would someone like Jerry Jeudy, or what we've seen with KJ Hamler, who is relying on their change of direction and speed, where Tim Patrick is a big receiver. So hopefully he can come back and to close to his best much quicker than some of the smaller, quicker receivers. So hopefully the update was like Nick said, just after at the NFL Combine, someone asked about Patrick, said it should be ready to go week 1. So those are the kind of things I'm looking forward to. Hopefully he's out there in shorts and his jersey at OTAs, putting in some work and getting in some routes.
Yeah, absolutely. Alabama Shagreen coming in saying, good morning. Who's your go-to target in free agency on the defensive line? Mine is still Draymond Jones. He's still here until he's not. Zach Allen makes a lot of sense, but I think Zach Allen might be the second most valuable defensive lineman on the market. So the Broncos might go cheap. They might just bring back Deshaun Williams, Scott's guy out there for super cheap, a 2-year, $5 million kind of deal, and then go out there and try to draft somebody as well. So we'll see. But I think if you lose Draymond, then your eyes turn to Zach Allen. Makes a lot of sense. Connection to Vance Joseph, an inside-outside kind of rusher as well. Probably can sign him for $3 to $4 million less per year. But I don't know what the Broncos are going to do with their cap right now. And also, if Zach Allen gets a contract that could impact Draymond Jones's comp pick, they might punt on that, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, which would be the Fletcher Cox, Devon Hargraves type. On the interior line, how has Hassan Ridgeway played? How did he play at San Francisco? He's 28 years old, was making $2 million last year.
He hasn't done much. Okay.
I was like, that might be somebody I'd keep an eye on, especially with some of the success you've had with the 49ers guys that you've brought in. But we'll my focus has really been early on draft and the Broncos free agents. I need to take a look and see who are some of the better ones out there so I can answer that question better.
Yeah. Baldwin Boxing. I don't recognize that name. So good morning to you, BB. Saying the Broncos have been so bad lately. My feelings won't be hurt to see anyone go. Yeah. There's not a lot of emotional attachment to a lot of these players given how bad the Broncos have been. But, hopefully they get a little better. Jeff W. saying, so this year will be go ahead.
Yeah, no, we've talked about that too. What do the players think about this? What would they think about this? And Baldwin Boxing kind of sums it up. We don't care. I mean, honestly, we do. There's a few of them where you might care, but they haven't earned the right to have a big to kick up a fuss that Sean Payton's coming in and he's got a reputation for being a hard ass. Too bad.
Yep.
You know, your 5 wins last year, your 7 wins the year before. You haven't earned the right. If you had played better, you wouldn't be getting a new coach anyway. So I certainly get that. You know, everybody has their favorite players, but for the most part, nobody's untouchable. Everybody has a price. Now, you would set a price on Pat Surtain that's so high that no one could afford it. But I get it. The emotional attachment to these guys is not as strong because they've been so poor the past several years.
Yeah, Jeff W., this will be a rebuilding year. It could be a setup for reset kind of year. If all the predictions come to fruition, it would certainly be nice to see investment made in Wilson to be functional before he falls apart from sacks. Some of that hopefully is going to be from players just healthy returning. Some of it will hopefully be from scheme. Some of it will hopefully be from Russell Wilson understanding what kind of quarterback he is and needs to be to protect himself. Last season, you said this stat a few times, but Pro Football Focus has a rate stat where you see how many sacks per pressure a player gets, and Russell Wilson was the single worst quarterback in the NFL in terms of pressures resulting in sacks, which means he's holding onto the ball too long. He's not seeing the field. He's not escaping like he used to. So he's got to be better there and protect himself, help out his offensive line some. But as far as the investment around Wilson, if the Broncos don't invest in Wilson, it's because that Sean Payton is not really trying hard not to be tied to him. And this is just reading between the lines, dot connecting here, but every single report, all the language from Sean Payton and press conferences and whatnot, it really seems he's trying hard to tie himself to the Broncos, but not Russell Wilson. So again, we're just trying to use intuition here, but it does seem like that's how the Broncos could be set up.
But as it should be. You know,
Yeah.
that's the way it should be. The problem was how far it went the other direction last year. You know, no player should be bigger than the team unless, you know, they've earned that. You know, and even then, you eventually move on. You know, Aaron Rodgers could be moved. He's been synonymous with the Green Bay Packers. We saw what happened with Tom Brady, you know, and those guys are a tier above or 2 tiers above where Russell Wilson's been, who's been a Pro Bowl quarterback for years. But these guys were their franchises. Russell Wilson comes into, and he hasn't really earned that with the Denver Broncos. And some of the stuff you're hearing was just asinine about the power structure last year. It was, I still don't believe some of it, but I also believe more of it than I did 6 months ago about, you know, the Nathaniel Hackett power structure and everything. Chase coming in says, "Morning, fellas. Appreciate all the work." Richard Butt with a good word. He says $2 for Nick's security deposit. And a good word for the Mile High Insiders last night. He says, "Last night's pod might have been my favorite from Thomas Hall. Cheers, gents, to my favorite duo here." Thank you, Richard. And I agree with you. You know, I'm on these shows usually 7 days a week in the background and do 4 of them. So I'm here a lot. Sometimes I'm more engaged than others. And last night's show was good. It had my attention. And I think Thomas, where he had the ability to relax and let his knowledge take over when he's got a partner like Luke to bounce off him and he's not trying to worry about hosting a show. I thought Thomas was fantastic last night, and it already has over 3,000 views on YouTube. So check out last night's Mile High Insiders. I'm going to cut up the segment where he goes to bat for Draymond Jones, where he says, you know, I understand why, but I disagree with it. And he went on a long monologue about it. I'm going to cut that up and put that up today and link it back to the show. So it was a good show. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Scott, good job. I don't know if you saw my internet freeze there for a second, but we're back. D-Generation X, good morning. All It's not the internet, it's the computer. I need to quit blaming the internet. I'm sorry, Xfinity. And good to see you, D-Generation X. Phil McLaughlin, good morning, Nick and Scott. What do you guys think about Bradbury or Pokosic at the center? Go Broncos and Buckham. Bradbury was a first-round pick for the Vikings, an extremely good athlete for the outside zone scheme, but he's had some issues dealing with power and pocket collapsers, and that is something that if you had a quarterback not named Russell Wilson or a better athlete back there, I'd be all about bringing in Bradbury. I think he's a great outside zone center and could help be a weapon in the run game, but because he gets blown up in his ability to anchor, that makes it really hard with Russell Wilson. So I think he's going to get paid. I think he's a better fit elsewhere. If the Broncos brought him in, I'd be worried about the fit with Wilson, but long-term outside zone ability in the run game would be fun. Pokosic at center, be excited. He's a little bit tall, 6'6", but been a pretty good player. I'm worried about what his market is going to be because he looked really good last year, but he probably was playing between the best guard duo in the entire NFL in Batinio and Wyatt Teller. So he had an easier job than a lot of centers out there. So will be interesting to see his market.
I just posted a link to one of my favorite parts of Spot Rack. They call it the value rankings. And Posick came in at number 2 at just 1.2 million. So he's up for a big raise. Creed Humphreys was number 1. Jason Kelsey in Philly at 9 million was actually number 4. So you can see where people came in and where they think compared to where they were paid. And we talk about value all the time. Is this guy, he's not very good. Well, he's a 7th round pick. You got what you paid for, or he stinks. Well, he was a vet minimum. You're getting what you're paying for. I think I started that with Teddy Bridgewater to begin with. I'm like, well, he's not good enough. You're paying $4 million. Yeah. You gave up a 6th round pick and $4 million. That's 3rd string money. Yeah. What are you expecting? He did okay for for what you paid for him. So I like that. And I just linked it in the chat if y'all want to check it out for centers. Gary Palmer comes in, says, good morning, Nick and Scott and Broncos family. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate you coming in yellow for us today.
Gary's the dude. We appreciate you. Nathan coming in, same as Sean Payton as coach. Do you expect the Broncos to utilize a fullback position, kind of like the Saints did? Yes, I expect Sean. I mean, we already saw it with them bringing in Lil Jordan Humphrey. They're looking for a bunch of different body types and weapons because what Sean Payton likes to run a matchup-based offense, and in that first quarter, he really likes to kind of prod different weapons and packages out there and see what other teams' game plans are for how they react to what you're running out there with based on your personnel and type of players, and then lean on what he thinks has been the best matchups based on how the other team responded to them. So having a versatile fullback, being able to play 21-12 personnel with kind of that hybrid H-back fullback type is something that this team is looking for. And luckily for the Broncos in this upcoming draft class, there's a lot of really good tight end classes. Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler, head over heels about this tight end class. It might be the best depth tight end class that we've seen in a decade. And you're going to have some options day 3 for the Broncos and some guys who could play day 1. The other one to watch out for here as far as a H-back, fullback tight end type is Foster Moreau. He was the number 2 tight end for a number of years with the Raiders. And the Broncos' backup offensive line coach was a coach of his in the past as well. So there's a connection there. So watch out for Foster Moreau as an option in that kind of skill set.
I would just expect to also see the running backs getting a lot of touches. Yes. They had in 2018, Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram combined for 340 carries and 100 receptions. So 440 touches. That's pretty close to what Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams split 2 years ago. I think they were both at 200 carries apiece, like exactly. I mean, they had the exact same amount. I don't remember if it was 200, but it was like 202, 203.
Yep.
And it was split evenly. You're going to get a heavy dose of the running back. So how much will the fullback be used? But we were talking about free agents you bring back. Andrew Beck, he could come back and he could become a valuable piece as well. They had Taysom Hill as kind of the fullback route as well. So again, Sean Payton is known for high-powered offenses. Drew Brees is known for throwing a lot, but they use the running backs a ton.
Yeah, Toyin coming in. Good morning, good afternoon. Good to see you, Toyin. Lawrence, what's up, guys? Dom saying, Nick, tell your wife to buy a new computer. It needs to be Daddy Chad. Needs to come in here for that. No, I'm just kidding. We'll get it out. We'll have to figure out how to get that a write-off and everything. Ryan coming in saying Jano. Michael coming in saying Andrew Beck is a fullback and tight end. He's the type, but maybe the Broncos want to go with a little bit of an upgrade there for the position. So, guys, I have a meeting today that I have to get out to pretty soon. So we're going to wrap up here shortly, probably next 10, 15 minutes. But we do want to talk about the title of the article, Woody Paige for the Denver Gazette, longtime writer. And I loved Woody. I remember back in like 5th grade coming home from class and watching Around the Horn. And I'd always cheer for Woody Paige's arguments on that ESPN show. He was always funny. I always loved the chalkboard in the background. But he said that the Broncos, there are 4 players listed that are very likely, I didn't say without a doubt, but very likely to be cut. And guys, we talked about on here before in Graham Glasgow, number 1, number 2 being Ronald Darby, number 3 being Chase Edmonds, and number 4 being Mike Purcell. So any surprise here, Scott? We were talking a little bit about Mike Purcell before the show started, but the rest of these all make all the sense in the world. The Broncos are going to move on from him.
I don't hear Glasgow echoing in my ears.
Glasgow's in there too. He was the first
Okay.
one listed.
So that would be, 5 then, right?
Glasgow, Darby, Purcell, Edmonds.
Okay, I'd throw Jake Martin in there possibly too. Maybe that's who I'm forgetting. But yeah, those are the guys that those 5. Again, they could be back, but they are prime restructure. They're getting paid more than their value, and they don't have a big dead cap associated with it. That means you're in jeopardy of not keeping that contract if you're a player, and you need to be willing to negotiate, or walk. But that's why you have agents. So no surprises in there. I think Purcell for me would be the one I would probably be the most apt to try and keep on his money. I mean, I think he's the cheapest of that bunch. Let me see where Purcell is. Purcell, I kind of went over him. Yeah, I have to scroll all the way down. He's at the 4, but he's got 0 dead cap.
Yeah.
He's at 3.8 million. It will cost $1 million to replace him. How many snaps are you going to get out of him? What is your scheme going to be like under Vance Joseph? He is a solid run plugging defensive tackle. What has been the weakness of this team is strength in the trenches for me, Nick. I'd kind of like Purcell to stick around.
I think you can the big question is for how this scheme is going to play under Vance Joseph. Can DJ Jones play more of those nose guard, nose tackle snaps? Is there a role for a 0 tech 1 technique based on what they're going to run? How much is that? And can you get that for cheaper? DJ Jones was awesome last year in his role. Mike Purcell was also, but the other thing about Purcell, you can save some money. He's had a lot of injuries over the last few seasons. So it's the double jeopardy kind of game. Maybe the Broncos hold on to him, and then that can be kind of a later cap casualty discussion when the Broncos are cutting down to 53, especially if Owazurike steps up and can kind of play more of those 0 through 2 technique, positional roles when you're running those out there, not 3, but that's something to consider. But I think right now, I like Mike Purcell. Also seems like a great dude, despite the, yelling towards Russell Wilson behind Nathaniel Hackett, who didn't hear him in that Carolina game. But, I think you can probably find that archetype for cheap. And if you can bring back Purcell for a restructure, maybe add an extra year with almost no guarantees in 2024, then fine. But he's listed, I think, and probably for a reason.
He did play all 17 last year.
Yes.
So, he could be battling niggling injuries. A lot of them do. Nobody's fully healthy come December. But again, and at $4 million, that's good money. That's solid money. And I like how you put that towards the end. He could end up being a cap casualty, just not in May. It could end up being in August when we talk about some of these guys. Who could you pick up? And you want to see how some of your young guys, who else is going to be available. So, yeah, I think that's a good shout that he's on the list. Yeah. But I feel more confident in him being back than I would, at least on that contract.
Yeah.
Than I do some of the other guys for sure. And he'll be 32 in about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Which is fine for a power player like that, but you could knock his number down. If he's due 4 this year, I could sign him to a new contract, 2 years, $5 million, to get 2.5, and I save $1.5 million a year on his deal. So he could be up for a restructure of sorts, but I think he's a decent guy to keep around, but maybe not at 4, maybe not at $4 million.
And just circling back to the Josie Jewell conversation earlier, it's the same thing for me with Purcell. He was healthy last year. The last 4 years, though, he's been injured. And so adding an extra year with guarantees on makes me a little bit weary, but we will see how it plays out. The other ones here that maybe you could see it strung out a bit is Darby. Darby's obviously coming off of an ACL injury that he suffered. And if the Broncos are, soft playing the offseason this year and instead looking more for flexibility in 2024, holding on to some of these guys, maybe getting a trade partner for them later on when the market doesn't materialize for cornerback post-April, the trade and stuff or post the draft, then maybe you can trade him and still move that salary off there. Will be interesting to see how that plays out. I think these 4 listed are probably going to be moved on from, but we'll see. Phil McLaughlin saying, I'm not confident in Javonte Williams being available in September. $2 to $4 million is worth going after James Robinson. Broncos are going to go after a running back, no doubt. The one thing about James Robinson is that he's not a very good player in the pass game. And I think that's a big part of the Sean Payton offense, at least what the guys they've been linked to so far.
Well, what was funny is I was kind of just looking at his numbers here, and I was like, this guy's kind of got a similar career arc to Phillip Lindsay. And then you just said, oh, and he struggled in the pass game. I'm like, he is Phillip Lindsay.
Except he's good in pass blocking.
Yeah,
as a receiver, he's not good, but he's a good
1,000 yards as a run-drafted rookie. Then all of a sudden he becomes a guy that is expendable, and his numbers go way down. As yards per carry goes way down in his second year. $2 to $4 million on James Robinson. No. James Robinson for less than that? Maybe. Yeah. Again, I see so many of these college running backs that are just good football players that I know I can get in the 5th and 6th round for a couple $100,000 and 3 years of control. Yeah. I am more interested in drafting a running back than I am signing a free agent running back, Nick.
You know what? You're going to get a little column A and column B because the Broncos are probably going to do both this cycle. Yeah. They probably won't sign a massive long-term deal on a running back, but I could see something where you sign Kareem Hunt to a 3-year deal, which essentially is a 2-year deal with pretty high money up front, but you're paying that money up front. So that way you aren't paying him, in 2025 kind of thing. So we'll see. Guys connected to Iene, the Broncos' new running back coach. Just keep an eye on David Montgomery, Kareem Hunt, and also running back from Northwestern, Evan Hull, who is, I'll spoilers right now. Broncos 6th-round pick in my next mock draft will be Evan Hull for the Broncos. He's a great fit for this offense too. He's a good receiving back, and he tested well. So Evan Hull, watch out for him. Lewis
is talking about Jimmy Graham stood out as a difference maker in Seattle. I can't even recall who else he played for. Saints. Played for Sean Payton and the Saints. Yeah. I just happened to see his numbers. I didn't know anything about him when he was coming out. Knew, okay, this is a basketball guy, and I was like, a basketball guy with these testing numbers? Draft this kid. Jesus criminy. And I think he kind of fell down and all this. I'm like, but God, you talk about, this is an athlete's game. This was an athlete. His numbers coming in the combine with a basketball background were awesome. Yeah. Turned out he was a pretty good football player too.
Yeah. So before we start to wrap up here, and appreciate everybody who's come in and supported us so far today. Scott, I got to run, Scott, so we can't talk to the computers, but we should definitely do that soon.
I'll send you some links. Okay. I like, and if anybody wants to talk cars, I'm available. I'll do some car shopping for you. I know sports. I know cars. I used to know kids movies. My kids are getting older though. So I know old kids movies, not the new ones anymore.
Yeah. You guys can hit me up for any questions about trails and backpacking trips in the Pacific Northwest. That's about it. But we were talking about it earlier, talking about holding on to Mike Purcell through the waves of free agency. I think the 4 that are listed here are probably going to be gone. But you mentioned Jake Martin earlier. I think that's one where it really makes sense for him. The Broncos they flipped a 4th-round pick for Jake Martin and a 5th, I believe is what the trade was. There might have been a 2024 pick in there as well. But the holding on Jake Martin come off, be looking to potentially flip Cooper or Martin for a pick when the Broncos start to go from 90 to 53.
Yeah, he's okay. He's fine, but is that good enough at what kind of money he's on? He's on $5 million. That's too high for me for what you're expecting out of him. Maybe he plays his way into that role, but that's too high for me with what he's got. I think he is I don't even think he's on the bubble. I think he's in the bubble, and then we'll see if something happens with him. But when we talk Chase Edmonds, we talk Darby, we talk Glasgow, I throw Jake Martin in there as a cap casualty too.
I think just given what they traded for him and what he was on the market prior to last season and the position he plays, that if you have a competition for him, you hold on to him for now, because again, we're talking about trying to play the rollover game. You're just holding on to that money right now through this free agency cycle, but it's going to be available for you 2024. And then you have what you did last year with, who's the player they traded that was the edge rusher? Malik Reed. You had Malik Reed here. You had Jonathan Cooper. Well, if I can get a 6th-round pick for Jacob Martin, the contract's then gone. We had him through training camp and whatnot. Then you move on. But I think that's what I'm thinking as far as keeping Jake Martin. The other one who comes to mind in that realm is Lloyd Cushenberry. To me, no, not much value for him as a backup, but maybe come May, June, July, before you have to cut down to 53, somebody sends you a 6th-round pick, you send a 7th, you got rid of the contract and you upgraded value just ever so slightly, but still it's there.
Yeah, on the move, on the move, one way or another. I don't expect him to play in Denver on that contract.
Yes.
Let's, so how that shakes out, we'll see. But as I'm looking through my guys, and I'm George Paton, he's one of the guys that I've got circled as we can do something here, one way or another. We can start shopping. We can start talking to agents about restructuring. But he is on the we need to do something with this contract right now. Well, we need to do something with this contract. I've got flexibility here.
Yes.
Ethan coming in. One surprise cut trade that hasn't been mentioned. What about kicker Jason McManus?
Brandon,
I'm sorry. Jason McManus was a fraternity brother of mine. How you doing, Fish?
Shout out.
Fish.
That's a good one. Mine was Happy Feet. But what about Brandon McManus? I could see him being cut as well, especially if the Broncos try to approach him with a restructure. He think he has a bit of self-confidence, I think is what we'll call it. So the Broncos approach him with a cut or a contract he believes below average. I mean, he was statistically one of the worst kickers in football last season. Granted, I think the snap exchange was an issue as well, and I'll give him credit for that. I'm tough on McManus because he's the kicker and they pay him a lot, but going to kicker purgatory is also concerning. And with McManus, it's similar to a lot of players, the Broncos right now on their team, where it's like, okay, you can move on from him this year. You save a little bit, but not a lot. And then 2024, his contract is easy to move on from. You save a lot. So I'm thinking it's probably a kick the can decision for him this year.
He'd be a post June 1 cut candidate. Cut that in half and you'd save almost $3 million because he's at 5 with a 2.5 dead cap. You might be able to trade him. I don't know. I mean, there's not a lot of trades for kickers. They're just, it's just, they're so hard to scout. It is. Like I said, there's tens of thousands of guys that can kick a 50-yard field goal. How many of them can do it with 80,000 people breathing down your neck? It's anybody can make a 4-foot putt. Do it at the Masters. It's just different. I would say a post June 1 candidate for him, but I think that's a good shout. And talk about the personality and a new regime. Might be time to move on from, I'm going to call him Jason again. Might be time to move on from Brandon McManus and get some new blood in there.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ethan. And talking about time to move on, I got to move on. I got to walk the dog and get into this work meeting. Sometimes that Pacific time zone is a curse if they're trying to get me in there for early meeting. And Scott just finished his coffee too. So shout out to Patrick. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB Pod and at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. I checked it yesterday. I see some comments on there on 5-star reviews on Apple iTunes. We appreciate that when you guys do that. Thank you for the shout out for somebody saying Nick need a new computer. LOL, love you, bro. I think he said the internet, but we're going to work on it here. Also, subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. Click that bell icon so that way you know when we go live. And we appreciate you guys. Just get the word out there. Free agency is right around the corner, and we're going to get into it. And also, we're going to get into Michael Davis with the buzzer beater. Bow, bow, bow. Somebody hit the air horn saying our Super Bowl teams had 4 to 6 potential Hall of Famers every time. Do we even have one? Patrick Surtain, everyone's expendable. We deserve relevancy. Deserve ain't got nothing to do with it. But yeah, it's the D word. But I think that the Broncos have potentially 2 Hall of Fame players on their roster right now. I think Justin Simmons, if he keeps he's a long-term player, but I think his play style lasts for the next 7 to 8 years. And if he keeps leading the league in turnovers, there's going to be an argument for him. There's not a lot of dominant safeties right now that you put up there. Which
I think will hurt him.
I think there might be
where it's going to be tough to get any safeties in from this group of players in the NFL for the last 5 to the next 10 years.
If he plays as well as he did the last 3 years for the next 6, I think there's going to be a long-term argument for him out there. There's just, I think the way the game is going right now, it's not romanticized or impactful as the safety position used to be, especially with how niche the players are being. But Patrick Surtain's definitely one.
Yeah, he's on that trajectory. The other one is pretty obvious, and you would sniggle at it right now, but it's Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
If Russell Wilson gets back into, it's going to be harder to make the Pro Bowl in the AFC, but if he gets back to throwing, being a top 15 type of quarterback and start stacking up the numbers where his overall career numbers move up, and he's got 9 Pro Bowls and he's got a Super Bowl ring, he's a guy, but he's got to start turning it around for sure.
Yeah, he definitely does. But guys, we're gonna have to get out of here. Thank you so much for the fun conversation. Scott and I will be back again on Monday. You guys have a great weekend. Make sure you continue to choose kindness and compassion. We'll chat later. Go Broncos.